What's going on, guys? Hey, look, we are in March. So we're gonna do the baits for March. Now, typically we do 5 baits. This time we're gonna do 3. I feel like March is a time that you really can key in on fish and keep it simple. So look, let me show you my 3 baits that are gonna be on the deck throughout March. So let's get into it. Now, just because 3 baits don't mean that that's all we're going to use, but this is going to be the 3 primary baits that I use in March. So let's go. All right, so bait number 1 for me in March is something you hear me talk about a lot, and that's a swim jig. So it's not just because I love fishing a swim jig. There's a rhyme and reason to my madness. Now, one of the main forages for bass in the springtime is going to be brim and crawfish. So this right here, this is a V&M pacemaker. It's like a bluegill color. It's probably one of my more favorite colors, especially in the springtime, because it has the orange that kind of lets fish key in the brim pattern. So this right here is going to be something that you can take and fish efficiently in and out of cover without getting hung up and spooking the fish. So I feel that's important. Whereas if you were to use say a spinnerbait or a crankbait, something of that nature, there's a possibility that it's going to get hung up and you're going to disturb the water where that fish is trying to either spawn or get ready to spawn. So with the swim jig, you can get in and out efficiently and cover a lot of water. So keep that in mind. Now, like I said, I have the V&M pacemaker. I like the Brazalo jig. He's got a great, it's Brazalo brim. It's a great brim pattern. So keep that in mind. I've been pairing it here lately with the Jester from jBro's, just an option to keep in mind. I've used the Rage Tail Menace for many years and have had much success with that. So, option number 1, swim jig. Now, for my swim jig setup, I'll post the video in the description that I've made in the past about how I rig up my swim jig. So check that out as well. All right, so we're on to number 2. Now, for me, number 2 is mind-numbingly painful to talk about. However, it's going to be a Texas rig. I prefer a simple lizard. That is going to be my go-to flipping bait in the spring. I know a lot of people like to flip a crawl. I like to flip a lizard. So lizards are going to be eating bass eggs, and that is going to be their number 1 predator as far as a creature bait or a flipping bait is concerned. So I like to take and I flip it. Now I will flip it on this setup here. I like to use a 1/4 or less, and the reason for that is I like to keep the bait in the strike zone as long as possible. So it's like mind-numbingly painful because it is so slow. I'm not a slow fisherman. So I like to take, I'll put it on 1/4 ounce or less and just slowly drag it in those places that fish ought to be and they ought to be bedding. So keep that in mind. With a 1/4 or less, you can take and keep it in the strike zone longer. And it's gonna, if it doesn't trigger a strike, as far as from reaction, it will irritate them from being in their bed, and they may just at least move it out of their bed, and that's when you can capitalize on sort of like bed fishing sight unseen. So keep that in mind. Like I said, number 2, I've got a video on Texas rig, and I will put that in the description below as well. So check that out if you have it. All right, so last but not least for me in March, it's going to be a spinnerbait. Now, I like to use a spinnerbait because a lot of times in March in my area, we get a lot of spring rains, a lot of thunderstorms, stuff like that. So you've got low light conditions and muddy water. So I can take this little gem right here and cover water, and also the flash and thump really help to trigger reactions. So that's why a spinnerbait is going to be my number 3 choice. Now I'll fish this on 17-pound monofilament. Usually I fish 1/4 to 3/8, and I like these white wood chartreuse patterns. Now I will throw some with like the red or the orange kicker blades, just because depending on how dirty the water is. In my area, the water typically stays a little stained, so my go-to choice is that Indiana blade. So you'll have to play with that in your area to find out which blade choice, which color choice works best for you. However, that is primarily the number 1 choice in my area. All right, so with all that being said, now those are my top 3 choices. You will see those on the deck of my boat all spring. However, you cannot rule out a buzzbait, a frog, nearly anything. These fish are going to be reactive to just about everything, but those are just my top 3 choices. Now, are they the best choices? For me, I think so. However, you'll have to play with it to see what works best for you. But this is just a start to kind of show you guys what I'm throwing and hopefully help you catch more fish in March. So, if this gave you some ideas for what to throw in March, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. It helps the channel out, and hopefully we can just continue to grow. I've gained a lot of subscribers on YouTube. I've grown a lot on TikTok, and I enjoy making this kind of content. I enjoy making fishing content. I just enjoy the community altogether. So, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button if you're new, hit the like button regardless if you're new or old, young or fresh, whichever, and let's catch some fish. So, if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments. I'll be glad to answer them as I can. And until next time, I greatly appreciate it, guys. So.